When I talked to you, I think that was back in June. Like it feels like a lifetime ago, honestly. And I just remember like just being able to even talk to you about it as a woman in this sports industry. I think it gave me a sense of peace of like not feeling so alone, even though I know that you exist in this space and that so many others before us and next to us. Like it just was refreshing at the time. And to be asked some of the questions that you asked me, I thought was also really important because these are conversations that we need to have about language and perceptions of disability in the industry and just how we naturally approach things. I think Jen and I agree that some of the language that has been adopted into the community has been created by able bodied people, and that not a whole chunk of us relate to first person language or, things like taking away the disability in the word disability, like saying differently abled or stuff like that. Like we kind of own it in a different way. So to try to rearrange things to make other people feel comfortable is something that we're used to, but I think our voice gets lost in that kind of stuff. So um, recently, I started working through the Seattle Kraken as their intersectionality consultant, and my job is to basically help them navigate, those types of language differences and how we can do our best to, you know, be welcoming to those new terminologies, but also be like, disability is not a bad word. Like we need to include these marginalized groups and not pretend that changing a name is going to change everything. Like we need to own the differences that we have and accept them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree absolutely with what Chanel had said. And, as myself, I think it's important to have more access, more accessibility on the ice, with the media, with the captioning, any kind of conversation. Really, it's important to have more in-depth accessibility. And I am on the ice with kids. I'm learning how to coach at the same time with these workshops, taking these. And, for me, I always have to request for that accessibility. And instead of them just already having it set up and standardized, because it's not across the industry. And it's really unfortunate. So, it's important to see the different perspectives, and that, disabled people sometimes, maybe an able-bodied person kind of looks down upon them and doesn't want to give access to that kind of thing, if you know what I mean. To players, maybe the able-bodied people think, a disabled person, oh, well, just go to maybe special hockey or deaf hockey. We don't specifically want them in, they don't think that disabled body people can play with them. And so it's important to, give us that opportunity instead of just dismissing what we are.
That's really good of you to add that, just that. And a lot of the conversation is just bringing the conversation to the space from the beginning, as opposed to as an afterthought. And I would argue that all of us in our own way can relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
And
often it's not only specifically for hockey, but for social media, other platforms as well. It's just not accessible. And I'm sure you've noticed on Twitter, there's several things not captioned, and you've seen my comments as well. I've made some vlogs as well about it. So it makes me wonder why able-bodied people, never think about accessibility first. Why is it always a thought later? Think, oh, you'll be fine. We'll we'll have the able-bodied people taken care of first, and you guys, you can just wait until later. That's kind of the message that we're receiving.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it has to be a culture change. That's for sure. Because especially in women's sports, we're told what we get is the most, it's going above and beyond, and to be grateful and thankful. So I think, as someone who almost exclusively covers women's sports, there has to be that conversation about what a league can do with the funds that it has, but to do it right, because we know that it costs more, regardless of whether you're talking about diversity and inclusion, or things like that.
Yeah, that's kind of pretty funny. So, for example, I'm a deaf person and deaf student, and it looks like, it's just kind of unfortunate because if they want to hire me, they would have to provide more accessible accommodations. They would have to hire an interpreter. And so that's what we have to do for work as well when we're applying for a new job. And so people will kind of, they don't want to hire us since we're deaf, and they have to provide all these other accommodations. They would prefer to have hire a person that's a cheaper cost, if you will. So just kind of unfortunate, but it's true. That's what happens.